Every week, Hillsdale College President Larry Arnn joins Hugh Hewitt to discuss great books, great men, and great ideas. This is Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio.
The following program is pre-recorded.
Morning glory and evening grace, America. That music means the Hillsdale Dialogue is underway, that hour we set aside for big topics and big talk. The last 4 weeks we've had Professor Khalil here. I got to tell you, Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, is back with me to talk some current events today, and then Churchill the next couple of weeks. He's been out of pocket traveling more than anybody I know in the last month. But Khalil was quite the revelation to my audience. Dr. Arnn, he can teach a bit, can't he?
He's not bad. Remember when I interviewed him for a job here? I sat and talked to him for 3 hours. It's a record. I interview them all, but three for every job. But with that guy, you can just talk to that guy all day long.
Yes, you can. What did you talk about? All the Shakespeare history plays like we did?
Everything. He actually was not entirely suitable for the job that we were advertising. His expertise is different, but everybody loved him so much. What did we talk about? At one point, we talked about how the college works and what we're trying to get done here. And at one point, he looked at me and said, "Can I help you with those things?" And I said, "Yeah, that's the job. You got to help." Well, he's been on your show. He's been helping.
He's a great teacher. I just can tell. Some people engage, listen, ask questions. He's just a great teacher. Now, you and I, it was providential that we didn't talk for 4 weeks. What's the old saying? Someone said it to me this week. Lenin said, nothing happens for centuries, and then centuries happen in decades. This has been a 3-week period that's been extraordinary. So let's just begin with your general reaction to what has happened.
Well, we're learning that it's a very dangerous world, and it's not going to be easy to navigate the world. The president is doing very dramatic things to attempt that, and we don't know how they're going to come out yet. I think I see what he's up to, but who knows? I haven't talked to him. I think all this has a lot to do with China. I think the 3 countries in the news, Venezuela, Cuba, and China, and I'm not talking about Cuba beating us narrowly last night in the World Baseball Classic. I'm talking about, Venezuela beating us narrowly. I'm talking about the fact that those 3 countries have close relations with China. In the case of Venezuela and Iran, China gets huge oil shipments from both places at subsidized rates. I read that Cuba has been buying 90% of Iran's oil, which are under sanctions. And that's great for them because they get the oil and they're not even paying market price for it. And they need the oil. So Cuba is, similarly close to China, and China's in the Western Hemisphere. Trump has been very upset about that in regard to the Panama Canal, Cuba, and Greenland. I see that the Chinese company that was running the ports of egress and ingress on both sides of the Panama Canal has lost the contract. So Trump cares about that here in the Western Hemisphere. And then Iran is on the other side of the world. And it's, maybe the most important Chinese proxy, but it's got them all over now into Europe too. And so it looks to me like a strategic move. These things look like strategic moves to keep China from taking over the world. But I'm not sure, what's on his mind. I'm confident that there's a great deal on his mind. I'm confident that we are unlikely to name a factor here that he's not thinking about.
Well, I think you put your finger on something that a few people have said over the course of the past month, is that there's a war within a war. There's a battle within a war. The war is Cold War 2.0 with China. And the battle within the war is with Iran. And before the battle was Venezuela, and during and after the battle was Cuba. But it all fits into superpower competition, which is back, and it never went away. We just pretended not to notice it after the Berlin Wall fell, and we got our dividend, our peace dividend for a long period of time. But if those three things turn out, and it's providential we're reading The Gathering Storm, because a lot of hoped-for things don't turn out the way that we hope for them. But if they turn out, we'll talk about best case and worst cases, the strategic position of the United States vis-a-vis China will be immeasurably improved. I keep saying on Fox, I think I've said it 4 times now, the world is a much better place today, 15, 16, 19 days, whenever I show up, than it was 15, 16, 19 days ago, because it is. Because Iran's much weaker and Venezuela isn't run by Maduro. It's better to have those results than not to have those results if you're an American.
If you can afford them, people are war weary, and Trump's supporters, many of them, have defected. And I understand that. We've had very ambitious wars in the Middle East, including to build democracy there. And they don't work out very well, and they cost a lot of money, and the situation is bad after they're over. It looks to me like Trump has more limited war aims here, which means more reasonable probably. And I think that we will, I think, I was reading today what he said last night and this morning. I think we might just declare victory. Everybody's saying, what's his end game, right? We're going to send boots on the ground and open the Straits of Hormuz. I wouldn't, I can only guess. I bet he doesn't know right now because he's weighing factors and they're changing every day. But I could see him just declaring victory and going home. And Iran is weaker than it was 2 weeks ago. And he could do that and say, we can come back if we have to. The fissures in the NATO alliance are very deep and obvious now. France is apparently, it's in the paper this morning, appealing to Iran to negotiate with them for Iran to protect its tankers and its oil coming to it through the Straits of Hormuz. And so there's an open breach there, but that's matched. And I don't know.
In the next segment, I intend to ask you, I think this may be the beginning of the end of NATO. And I'm not given to overly dramatic statements, but the failure to show up and the separate peace negotiation, it's not how an alliance works. But Macron is a lame duck. He doesn't represent France. I don't think Keir Starmer represents Great Britain. But to stay for a moment on the fact that the Marines are going from an MEU, and you've got Marines all over that place up at Hillsdale, and you bring in the former commandant, and you bring in my old friend, and they give lectures, and you generate a lot of Marines and other people for the services up there. 2,500 Marines and an MEU and all the sporting crap. They can do a lot of different things. They could go to Karg Island. They could take up positions on the Iranian side of the strait. They could go off of Yemen and menace them. They can do a lot of things. I also don't think it would be a bad thing if we just pounded them for 4 more weeks or 8 weeks from the air so that there is very little left to make war with, and then dare them to close the straits, because if they hit a ship, we'll have to do something else. Like you said, options are on the table.
And here's there's a strain of thought that's legitimate and big, and it is the original foreign policy of the United States avoided long-term alliances and avoided involvements in the world outside the Western Hemisphere, the Monroe Doctrine. But that itself, by the way, was built on an alliance with the British and their Navy, which agreed with the thing and helped us to enforce the Monroe Doctrine. There's always been alliances. We've been reluctant about them, and we were off here by ourselves on a continent by ourselves. And we were very keen to get control of the continent, which we did. And that was a major achievement, to extend free government across that vast land. When they started out with the intention to do that, they didn't know how big the continent was. They'd never traversed it. That was a whole human generation later that they achieved that with Lewis and Clark. So one train of thought is we don't have to worry about the Straits of Hormuz. And I will just say there's something to that. We are an oil independent power. Trump appealed for help to police the straits and open them up to the people who really are dependent on it. And all of them have declined. And, so there's an argument for, okay, we don't want Iran to be a nuclear power with long-range guided missiles that can reach us. And we don't want that, right? And so we are taking steps to prevent that. But maybe we don't care as much about the Straits of Hormuz. That's a question to be open.
It does involve the price of oil, though, since oil is an international market, and it's close to $100 a barrel today as we're talking on Wednesday for airing on Friday. I'll be right back with Dr. Arnn. Stay tuned.
Hello, this is Jeremiah Regan, and I have some great news. We've brought Hillsdale's incredibly popular free online courses to the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. The Hillsdale College Online Courses Podcast brings you our online courses in their entirety, with courses ranging from ancient history and biblical epics to foundational political principles and the future of American citizenship. Follow the Hillsdale College Online Courses Podcast to hear new episodes every week with additional commentary and insights from our team. Go to podcast.hillsdale.edu to learn more. That's podcast.hillsdale.edu.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I always send outlines of these programs for the Hillsdale Dialogues. All things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, including your application, including the opportunity to sign up for Imprimis. They have a brand new course on rhetoric available on the Hillsdale online courses, which I recommend to you. All things is Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu. All of our prior dialogue, Hugh for Hillsdale.com. But before I sit down with Dr. Arnn, send him an outline. And here the outline says best case, worst case of the war with Iran. How do you put the best and the worst on the table, Dr. Arnn?
Well, the best case would be regime change if the people of Iran manage to make it. I don't think we can. I don't even think we're going to try. What we're doing is ruthlessly eliminating senior leadership and the IRGC, Republican Guard. And that might make an opening. That would be a good case. And a good case would be Iran was not an irresponsible, dangerous power anymore. That's the best case scenario. I don't know if we should expect that right now. I also don't think we depend on it. Cleaning up the whole world is going to take a long time. And then it'll still be messy after that, probably. Another good thing that's happening is, although NATO is very shaky, the Gulf states are very strong. They don't like these Iranians, right? And Qatar and Saudi Arabia and all of them, they've got plenty of problems of their own, but their course has been to modernize, make the place tourist attractions. They like, especially Qatar. They like people coming, right? And so they're being attacked by Iran. And Iran is hostile to them. So we've got some allies there.
Yeah,
I read this morning in Qatar.
One of my favorite British prime ministers is Palmerston. And one of his favorite sayings was, Britain has no permanent allies nor enemies, only permanent interests. The same applies to us, and our interests are in the Middle East with those who stand with us. Well, and if our old allies aren't our old allies anymore, that's over, and we just got to deal with it.
That's right. I hope and think that there's an argument that's, a progressive era argument that's been very powerful in both Republican and Democratic administrations since the progressive era and up to recent. And the argument is, if we make the whole world free, then at last there'll be peace in the world. And, that's obviously a wonderful ambition. It's got some logical problems with it. One of them is the limit power from outside. Another one is, can you run a free country for somebody else? The British Empire, which, lasted a long time and was everywhere and was very successful, the core of it soon became a bunch of free countries that were on their own initiative loyal to the crown and the alliance with Britain. And the one big trouble spot was India, and that never did quite work out for them. Churchill
The core of it, I might also add, was
was
Reformed Christianity, was it not? It was not evangelical, but it was by almost happenstance evangelicalism, and the common law came with the British Empire.
Yeah. And see, if you can't make the whole world into a friend, and I personally have never believed that we could do that, and I don't believe the founders of our country believed that. In fact, I know they didn't. They certainly said to the contrary, let's put it that way. Then it means that we're going to live in a dangerous world, and we need to be smart and cagey, and we shouldn't look for utopian solutions. And so it's possible that what comes out of this is that we get out of there in a couple of weeks. And the place is still a mess, but now Iran is a weaker part.
I'm giving us until the best case is we're out of there by the end of May with whatever follows. And there are grades on that. Worst case, we have an enduring presence and a base in Iran that can be threatened. Do you agree with me about that?
Yeah, everything is a prudential matter, right? In other words, let's say that there's a revolt and a friendly government is established, and they ask us to stay and offer us money to stay. Well, we'd certainly listen to an offer like that, but it depends, right? If you start with thinking through the interest of the United States of America, which are the proper concern of its government, its people, their interests, then, you're going to have to be smart because, look, China, if we were fighting China right now, the Heritage Foundation did a big AI-powered war game, Us and China, and it's being published now, I think. And what it shows is, against China, we run out of bullets in 3 weeks.
Yep.
And by bullets, I mean the sophisticated stuff. You can actually do something on a modern battlefield. I think we have some exciting new weapons coming, and I think some of them are even deployed in Iran. But look at the position we're in. See, the world is very dangerous, including very dangerous for us. And I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. But look, we've got 11 or 12 aircraft carrier groups, and they are the greatest mobile assemblage of power in human history. And maybe they're not safe anymore.
Alas, with the retirement of the Nimitz, we're down to 10, and alas, they may not be what we thought they were, but they have not yet been touched. I'll be right back with Dr. Arnn. Don't go anywhere. The Hillsdale Dialogue continues. Welcome back, America. Dr. Larry Arnn is with me. All right, I left the shortest segment of our Hillsdale Dialogue, all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu, and all of the Hillsdale Dialogues are found at hughforhillsdale.com. We have spent the better part of a year in the 1930s watching Britain prepare or not prepare for war, France prepare wrongly for war, and we're going to spend a lot of time on Churchill's memoirs going forward. But Dr. Arnn, Britain and France have not been the allies that we were to them in their two struggles in the 20th century. And I, for one, am deeply disappointed. And I wonder, like Lindsey Graham, out loud, does NATO go on after this? What do you think?
Well, it needs to be in the interest of the United States of America. And is it? It needs to show that it can contribute. Because let's say I believe that we need allies. I think we're outnumbered, as we have for most of American history. And the oceans are not as wide as they used to be. And so let's say you need allies. Well, what are the criteria? You need allies who can fight. You need allies who are unlikely, for deep reasons, to join your worst enemies. And I'm not sure that those European nations meet that criteria, all of them, maybe none of them. Poland and Hungary,
Finland.
Probably.
Finland is among the ones we could count on. Maybe Sweden.
Germany has been closer, because Germany's a big country, and Germany has been closer to us in this thing, but they're not helping. And I don't know that I blame them. Trump is very bold, right? And he's got gumption. Boy, does he not. And so he hasn't gone into this with the statement, I'm going to remake the Middle East. He has said that might happen. It depends on people in Iran and in the region. But what he's doing is weakening Iran. And I believe it's connected to China. And, North Korea is a crazy regime and has nuclear weapons that can reach some American territory by missiles. And that's very dangerous. One would have to guess that the Iranian regime would be more dangerous.
Well, I think it is. Let me give you the argument why. North Korea is a fanatical despotism run by one man and his family, and they have nuclear weapons. Iran is a theological, end-times-driven, millenarian-driven eschatology, and that's a lot more dangerous because they got a vision of the after times that involves chaos and the hidden imam emerging from the well, and that's not good for anybody.
No, well, it's good for the imam, I guess. But the thing, like the argument being made by some important people who've been close to Trump, important people with large audiences, has been he promised no more war. I'm not sure that he ever did that, but if he did that, he was being foolish because that's not entirely in our hands, and we don't know enough to know if this war is going to make sense. But if it weakens Iran for an intermediate term of time, at the cost that we've paid so far, then that's a gain. You got to weigh that up.
He came down the escalator in 2015. He said a few things, and people remember the wall. But he also said Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, and the JCPOA is the worst deal that's ever been done. And he had said about Iran not having a nuclear weapon repeatedly for decades before he got into politics. He thought we were being embarrassed by this. This is sort of one of the few through lines of his career, is that Iran's a dangerous place and they can't have nuclear weapons. I don't think he ever said he would not bomb Iran. In fact, I think he said the opposite.
Yeah, I don't, people might have heard, and, he was very critical of these forever wars. And I was too at the time. He was too at the time. Just because I thought, how exactly are you going to do that? The British, what Churchill believed was that if the British had hung on in India, that there'd been huge progress in India. And there's a democratic government and a free self-government, consent of the government in India today. And that is inspired by the British Empire experience. So that's a very long-term deal. And Britain is a different country from us. We probably wouldn't be very good at that.
About 250 years to go from the many kingdoms of India to the Right Honorable Company to the British Empire. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned with Dr. Arnn on all things Hillsdale at hillsdale.edu.
It's no secret that Americans are more divided than ever. And it's not just over what policies will improve our great country. No, it's over whether America is great at all, whether America deserves our love. That's why Imprimis is so important. Imprimis looks at the issues of the day from a constitutional perspective, reminding citizens always of our great heritage of liberty. For more than 50 years, Imprimis has featured speeches from the smartest conservative thinkers and writers at Hillsdale events. These days, Hillsdale publishes people like Molly Hemingway, Andy Puzder, Harmeet Dillon, and Chris Rufo. Over 6.4 million American households and businesses receive Imprimis absolutely free. And I urge you to sign up for it today at no charge. To get your free lifetime subscription, go to hillsdale.edu/lifetime right now.
Welcome back, America. Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. Dr. Arnn, in the first three segments of this Hillsdale Dialogue, first one we've talked about since the war with Iran began, neither you nor I have mentioned Israel. And I was kind of waiting to see if you would, and now I want to bring it up. If you're going to have one ally in the Middle East and maybe the world, I think it might be Israel. What do you think?
Well, I went down my list, and they can fight, and they're not going to join our enemies. And they're located in a very important place. I don't think that they're telling us what to do. it doesn't make any sense that they could. They're a little country, right? And in America, our government is elected. I should mention this. One of the things that I regret the progressive amendments to the Constitution. And the 22nd Amendment comes rather later. But it means that Trump can't run again. And it would be better if he could. It would be better if he could, and it would be better if he didn't. Both are true. But it would be better if he could, because right now he can't stand in front of the American people again. And so people are saying that he doesn't care what they think. And that means that mistake was that amendment was a terrible mistake. And it's traceable in part to Franklin Roosevelt, who violated the example of George Washington and got himself elected 4 times. Nobody else more than 2.
Grant tried. We should note that Grant tried to get a nomination, but was rejected. So it's not a given that you're going to get renominated.
That's right. And that's the reason, because we were in a beautiful position before. The greatest American, if it's not Abe Lincoln, is George Washington. And he had set an example, and that example was powerful, but it was not constitutionally prescribed. And it would be really cool right now if, because there's a lot of, and who knows about the midterms? Everybody is despairing about them. And I like the fact that they're in the future, which means that we don't know. But he would be more formidable in the midterms if he might be able to say, I might do it again. And maybe
he'll be more formidable in the midterms if a conclusively positive, I don't use the word victory because I don't know what victory looks like, but if a positive result comes out of this conflict, and one that is unassailably positive. I mean, there's a bell curve in intellects, and there'll be dumb people on the far left and the far right who won't like whatever the result is. But if 80% of Americans says, hey, we are in a better position now than we were before Trump ordered epic fury, I'm feeling pretty good about the November elections, Dr. Arnn. What about, if that's the case, what do you think?
Well, it's always better to feel pretty good on any given day, because if you, sufficient unto the day is the evils thereof. Yeah, I think we don't know. And I do think that the president is a very formidable politician, and he breaks a lot of rules. And one of the rules he breaks is he's, in a second, presidents are notoriously weak in their second terms, all of them. He has not been. They're more notoriously weak after the midterms. We'll see. And he's, one of my wise old friend John Marini has written many times, the way Republicans tend to win on national issues. And so they nationalize elections. They make it about the greatness and well-being and preservation of the country. And Trump is pretty good at that. And I would have hopes, let's put it that way. And I'm certainly not giving up.
Let me take the break now. We'll come back, and I'll ask Dr. Arnn about student opinion on Hillsdale College after the war has begun, because he does haunt the dining room. So I'll be right back after this. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Dr. Larry Arnn is my guest. The Hillsdale Dialogue is underway. Dr. Arnn, we got 3 minutes. You haunt the dining halls. What do your youngsters think about this war?
Well, it broke out over spring break, and so Lord alone knows. But I think that they, like most Americans, are tired of forever wars. And to some of them, it will look like Trump has embarked on that. But also they're patriotic, and they love their country, and a lot of them, I've enjoyed, there's, if you go on YouTube, probably 2/3 of it is lies, but they're charming lies about the weapons we're using and the way the battle is going. And so there's a lot of enthusiasm for that. It's like watching a really good football game. And so it'll be both things, right? And they'll be just like you, and just like I am, at least, trying to figure it out and see what it means. And remember, in an education, these kids are 18 to 21 years old, and they're young, they're smart.
Has it impacted them that the regime that we're fighting murdered 35,000 people their age in January? I'm just wondering if that's in their consciousness. They just gunned them down.
Well, you have to make an adjustment there, because this is not an activist campus, nor do we want it to be. One of my favorite things to say to them is, you're too young and ignorant to save the world yet. Why don't you learn about it? And that's what you get a chance to do here, right? And so I had a meeting, young professor and I had a meeting with 45 boys a few weeks ago, a kind of extra meeting at night about the Middle East and stuff. And here, first of all, one of the questions was, how do we know about the Holocaust? Because they hear, important people diminishing it. And, that's, in other words, that's a very basic question, right? How do you know?
Oh my gosh.
And I answered this. Answered this way. I said, do you ever run across, go home and do it over break? Look up a letter or a paper that you wrote in high school and read it. Because whatever memory you have of how you were in high school will be corrected by that piece of writing that you find, and you can find it, and you will say, oh yeah, that's what I was like, right? The reason we know about history is that it exists in documents written at the time, and there are a massive number of them. Well, remember, that's undergraduate college, very ambitious, studying all the great things with a bunch of young people who never did that before. And that's the kind of thing, right?
That's a wonderful way for them. Have them go look at it. Have them go watch Eisenhower march the local Germans through the death camp. That's on video. No, that's not made up.
Yeah.
Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College. Thank you, my friend. All things Hillsdale, hillsdale.edu. We'll be back next week in the war. The war has begun as we get into the Churchill memoirs. Don't miss the next Hillsdale Dialogue.
Thanks for listening to the Hillsdale Dialogues, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you find your audio. For more information about Hillsdale College, head to hillsdale.edu.